Lyndon Arthur is back, ready to stake a claim for a shot at world glory when he takes on Argentina's Walter Gabriel Shechiera. Part of a huge night of action on Saturday, September the 17th. It's live and free on Channel 5.
This is Umar Ahmed for Rafael TV, proudly sponsored by Avlast. As soon as Rafael entered the media room, the first thing I said, it's not a Las Vegas fight week unless you're here. I was looking for you yesterday, but you arrived. Nothing like a Las Vegas fight week.
Hey, listen, I'm just probably a couple hours off the airplane. Nice, very early morning flight cross country. I've done that a zillion times. Like you said, it's a big fight week. I always feel at home when I come back to the MGM. You walk in the front door, they got the ring set up with the lion in there and then the signage of the fight. And you know, if you look in the gift shop, you see the shirts and the hats and all the junk they got for sale, all that good stuff. And you're ready for a big fight. And by the way, it's not just, just any old big fight, so to speak. It's not just any old Canelo fight. It's the rivalry fight. It's a third fight of him and Golovkin. I mean, it may not be what it was a few years ago, but it's still a great matchup and a highly anticipated fight. And if anybody says they absolutely know what's going to happen, they're lying because they don't.
Well, I was actually going to come on to that. I've seen a lot of experts, top people in the sport, big names, backing Canelo very confidently, and some even predicting him to stop Gennady. I've never seen Gennady hurt in a professional ring. So have you been surprised by the amount of people fully backing Canelo, especially after what happened in May with Bivol?
I'm not in any way surprised that people would pick Canelo. I mean, it makes sense. He's a lot younger. He's in his more natural weight division. He's got great power. He's got an official victory against Triple G already, whatever you think of that win. But to say they're going to see a fight in which he just rolls over Gennady Golovkin, I just don't buy that. This is a man that's had, as much experience as anybody in the business. But more importantly, he's still really good. He's still in good shape. He's still in a good frame of mind. He's coming off of a significant victory out, in the other guy's hometown. Now, I think a lot of folks might say two things why they would put a knock against a Triple G going into this fight. One is he's 40 now. Okay, that's fair. But I think he's a well-preserved 40. And it's not like we haven't seen other all-time greats in their 40s do very well. Not a lot, but the special ones have done it, whether it's Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao. George Foreman as a heavyweight, that's a little bit different, even Evander Holyfield in his 40s. Certainly Floyd Mayweather, Bernard Hopkins. But Gennady, as a Hall of Fame level fighter, is on par with those types of names. So that combined with, as you said, you've never seen him hurt in a fight. Well, I've never seen him hurt in a fight either of any notable way. He's never been knocked down, certainly never been stopped. He's had 24 rounds with Canelo Alvarez, who's a tremendous fighter, a Hall of Fame fighter, was a pound for pound for a while, a good puncher to the head and the body. He hit him a lot. He never made Gennady waver in their fights. So, again, I'm not saying that Gennady wins the fight, but I just don't see a true scenario where he just gets blown out. I mean, look, the one thing people say is a body shot, but that can go either way. Gennady is a good body puncher when he wants to. Obviously, Canelo's a tremendous body puncher. You land that shot the right way, you're going to go. But they both take headshots extremely well. So I'm looking at a long, probably distance fight now. Maybe Canelo gets it on the cards again, but I just don't see a blowout in any way.
Okay, DAZN pay-per-view in the US and UK, of course. Lots of hype around the first and second fights with Canelo and Golovkin. How do you think the hype's been this time round, and how do you expect it to perform on DAZN pay-per-view?
Well, first of all, it's DAZN pay-per-view here in America, but is it DAZN pay-per-view in UK also?
Yes, it is actually. It'll be 4 or 5 in the morning, and it is on pay-per-view in the UK.
I wasn't sure about that, but I guess that makes sense. They're looking for every dollar, and the pay-per-view is higher priced than it's been in the past. In America, it's $85. Now, it's less if you have a subscription to DAZN, then it's $65, but you get a month of DAZN with it. But in terms of the hype associated with the third fight compared to what the hype was for the first two fights, I mean, as much as I'm looking forward to the fight, and I know there's lots of fans that are in the same frame of mind as I am, I'd be lying if I said the hype was the same. It's just not. I mean, there's far less expectations and anticipation for this fight in my mind. Taking into account the fact that people will say Gennady is 40, that they'll say Canelo made him wait it out, to have the third fight 4 years after the second fight, as opposed to maybe, within a year or two afterwards. So, it's kind of like movie sequels, right? You get a great big blockbuster movie and it does huge numbers and everybody loves it. The sequel might do really well, but it maybe doesn't perform as well, and then they start going to part 3 and part 4, and it becomes thing about diminishing returns. So this is not as big, I don't think, for the general sports fan. Like Canelo won and Gennady in the second fight had a certain element of mainstream interest in this country because of their rivalry. And by the way, they had waited so long to see the first fight, not that long. It was like, maybe 10 months a year after when people really, really wanted to see it. And even back then, people said that Canelo was making and Gennady waited out. And now they fought 1 year later, but it was supposed to be 6 months later, but it was postponed because of Canelo's clenbuterol test. And now it's been 4 more years since then, and they've both gone and done different things since then. Gennady hasn't maybe looked great in some of his fights, but he at least has been active recently. I mean, he did just fight Murata around the same time within a few weeks of when Canelo had his loss against Bivol. So, listen, in the performance on pay-per-view, you take into account that it has been a fight that's not as hyped up as the first two. And by the way, I'm not saying it's not been hyped up. It's just not at the same level as 1 and 2. But then you put it on DAZN pay-per-view, and I can appreciate their situation, and it obviously is a worthwhile pay-per-view fight. The problem is DAZN still is not a known brand in this country, or it's certainly not yet in the UK. So just off that alone, it could be the greatest fight of all time, but there's still a brand that's growing and building, and it's hard to match that up in the United States compared to like HBO pay-per-view, which was as brand a name as you could get in boxing, had done most of the biggest fights that had ever happened, other than many of the biggest fights that Showtime had done. But they were the two that did all the big fights, and HBO pay-per-view, they built Canelo and Gennady 1 and 2 on their pay-per-view platform, and they performed extremely well over 1 million buys for both of them. Massive ticket sales, not that was a network thing, but T-Mobile Arena, which is going to host this fight, also hosted the first two fights. First fight did like $27 million American at the gate. The second fight was like 24 and change, if I recall, 24 million and change. And while this fight will do well too, I'm sure, I don't think it comes close to those numbers. And the thing about it is, the fight in terms of what the guarantees for the boxers are, and believe me, I don't begrudge any fighter for getting every dollar they can get, but this fight costs way more than the first two fights, and it will generate, I think, in the end, way less.
Okay. Dan, I can't quite believe I'm saying this, but Tyson Fury put an offer to Team Joshua, and they accepted every single term. So December 3rd in Cardiff, 60-40 split with a rematch clause should Joshua win at 50-50. Just get your reaction to that, and also potentially Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn working together. It's all a bit bizarre, but very good for boxing.
I mean, it's great for boxing, obviously, but I've been down this road many times. We've talked about this on a variety of fights over the years. And while I'm hopeful, and it sure sounds good, and everybody's saying the right things, and it seems on the right path, maybe I've just been around too long. Call me a little bit of a cynic. I'll believe it when I see it. When they sign, and we have a press conference, and it's announced and all that, then I'll be totally psyched. But obviously, it's a good fight. I've heard some people kind of downplay it. I would say this from the point of view of strictly the money. It's probably a bigger fight than Fury against Usyk. And I can't blame Tyson Fury. I mean, look, Tyson goes back and forth. One day he wants to retire. One day he wants to fight. One day he's fighting Derek Chisora. One day he's changing trainers. One day he wants to do Joshua against him, and it has to be for free with nobody can make any money. Now it's like 60-40, and we're going to make $1 gazillion. So, he's been bouncing off the walls like, you throw a ball against the wall. This week, today, maybe he's in the mood to fight Anthony Joshua. So I'm hopeful that it happens, and obviously it's a big fight. And if he wants to fight by the end of the year and keep a little bit of activity, he's still in his prime as best as I can tell. Why would you want to lay off that long? He doesn't need the money, but he wants to stay active. He enjoys doing it, which he always talks about how much he loves boxing. He likes the training and all that. He shouldn't have to wait around for Alexander Usyk. If Usyk has got some injuries that he's dealing with or wants to take some time off, that's his prerogative. He just beat Joshua in a very good fight. And if he doesn't want to fight till the early part of next year in the spring, it shouldn't be something that's going to force Fury to go by his schedule. So if you're not fighting Usyk for the undisputed, you tell me, what's the next biggest fight in the entire sport of, at least in heavyweight boxing? Certainly Joshua against Tyson Fury. It's a massive fight. Certainly in Britain, that will, in all of the UK, that will sell out. Cardiff, what is that, 80,000 or so?
80,000, yeah.
So Joshua fighting guys not nearly the level of, not nearly the name level or even boxing level of Tyson Fury. What he fought Joe Parker there in a unification. Yeah. I mean, Joe Parker's a good fighter, but he's not Tyson Fury. And I think was the other Carlos Takam.
Carlos Takam on 2 weeks' notice, yeah.
So, again, those fights drew like 76,000, 78,000. This will sell out. It's a massive event. And I hope it happens. But again, I'm not getting ahead of anybody. Show me or tell me, send me a press release that says it's done. Have them go on and social media and say that they're good to go. Have Eddie and Frank make statements that we've signed, whatever. And by the way, there's no reason why Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren can't work together when it makes sense for everybody. It's sort of the same thing in America. We have many, so-called Cold Wars over the years. Whether it was, a long time where Don King and Top Rank, Bob Arum were the most known and powerful promoters, and they very rarely did events together. Then there was a time when it was Top Rank and Golden Boy. Then it was PBC and basically everybody else. But when the fights are right and the money is there and it makes sense for everybody, they get together. And this is a fight that makes sense for everybody, it seems to me.
Okay, just picking this back up with Dan, Rafael. Do apologise. We're mid-interview and someone from DAZN grabbed me and said, "You've got to go and interview Gennady Golovkin now." So
I thought you had to run out and take a leak.
Well, the speed I ran at, it would suggest that. Got that Golovkin interview done. So I'm back with Dan. My last question on Fury Joshua, that's what we're talking about. 60-40 split, of course, in favour of the champion Tyson Fury. Do you think that's a fair offer from them?
I do think that's a very fair offer. There's no doubt about it. I think at this stage of the game, all due respect to the star power of Anthony Joshua, when you lose 2 in a row, whatever the circumstances, you're not getting 50% against a guy like Tyson Fury, who is the champion, who's a draw in his own right, maybe not necessarily on his own in terms of the money as big as Joshua has been, but he's an economic force as well. I thought it was an honest offer from Fury, and I think it was an honest response from Joshua to understand that if he wants that opportunity to fight for that title, you're going to have to give a little bit. And the thing I look at also is this. Anthony Joshua has made it more money to take care of generations of Joshuas. Same thing with Fury. So at this stage of their careers, and I'm not begrudging any fighter for making every dollar they can make, believe me. However, they've both made astronomical amounts of money, and at this stage of their careers, the percentages are just a matter of keeping score with the other guy. Like, I'm better because I got the bigger pie. You know what? Sometimes to get what you want, you got to give a little bit. And in the case of Joshua, if he really wanted this fight, he was going to not get parity or even the lion's share. And if Fury really wanted the opportunity to have a fight against Anthony Joshua, which is obviously a huge fight, there was no way he was going to get him to come for 25 or 30%. So, yeah, I actually believe that for a change in this crazy sport, that you had intelligent decisions made on both sides. For Joshua to accept the 40% and for Fury to even offer that much in the first place. So I'll say this, I give both Fury and Joshua credit for that, because I don't think if it was left up to the devices of their teams that they would have necessarily approached it that way. But when the boxers who run their careers, when Fury says, this is what I'm offering, and nobody's going to be able to talk him out of it, and Joshua can take all the advice in the world he wants from people like Eddie Hearn or from 258 Freddie and Freddie Cunningham and his crew. At the end of the day, he's his captain and he's going to make his decision. And so he basically said, no, we'll take the 40, and good for them.
Another thing that Eddie and Frank are agreeing on, which is very rare, but it's all happening at once. Both of them have stated the potential of this fight doing 2 million pay-per-view buys in the UK. Do you think that's an overestimation?
Pay-per-view is a tough business now. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. What's the record? Isn't it like
1.4, I believe. I don't know that for a fact. I think it's either 1.2 or 1.4.
That was a Ricky Hatton fight, if I'm not mistaken, or a previous Joshua fight.
Joshua Parker.
2 million is a big number, and with all due respect to the people at DAZN and BT, they don't have the pay-per-view muscle of Sky. If you told me that Joshua and Fury was on Sky in the UK, I would say, you got a real chance. BT and DAZN are excellent at what they do, and they're good companies, and they got smart people, and they support boxing, and I appreciate that. I don't know if they have enough of the mainstream audience of boxing as well as mainstream to get to that level. DAZN obviously doesn't. They're an upstart still in the UK. That's just a fact. It's not a knock on them. It's just that you can't go from having never been in a market to now having decades of experience in that market until you get the decades of experience. And obviously BT is a big deal over in the UK, but it's just not, at least from my knowledge, is not as entrenched as Sky is. And so, look, Eddie and Frank are promoters. That's what they do. They put out hope. They try to drum up the interest. That's their job. I don't knock them for saying that.
We're sat here talking about it. So.
Yeah, exactly. If they can do $2 million, then everybody's going to get even richer than they would have gotten if they don't. But whatever the number is, the bottom line is it's going to do a huge amount of business, and it's obviously a huge fight. And if you're a boxing fan in the UK, or even just a sports fan and you know about big heavyweight championship fights, how are you not buying the fight? And it's not like they got to stay up till 4 a.m. like if it's from a fight coming from the United States, or it's a fight right there in their own country. Everybody can watch it live, in a normal time. It'll do big business. I mean, it's a huge event. As I've said, I think from a historical point of view, certainly an Usyk fight for the Undisputed is a bigger deal. But from just an event perspective, as far as like just getting everybody up in arms and excited about an event because of the fact that they're both of these two great British heavyweight champions and an ex-champion, makes it for a really big mega event. And here's the other thing about it. Alexander Usyk is a great fighter. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's fantastic. But he doesn't, because of the language barrier, and he doesn't do a lot of interviews. He doesn't really put himself out there. And again, I'm not knocking him for that. That's just who he is. But with the case of Fury, who you can't get to shut up, which is good for a promoter, and Joshua, who's always done a lot of media and has been good with the press, and I speak about Fury and Joshua from that point of view, from firsthand experience. You get those two guys promoting a fight against each other. It's just you have two guys that bring a ton to the table promotionally. Where if it was Fury versus Usyk, it's Fury and Usyk is almost like an afterthought, other than the fact that he comes as the guy with the 3 other titles.
And just to close off, I want to get an American's perspective on Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. Of course, a massive, massive deal in the UK because of what the fathers went through in their 2 fights, and one of the best rivalries, if not the best, that British boxing's had with the dads.
You think that's the best British rivalry of all time?
I think Froch Groves was massive. Obviously, Fury Joshua, if that gets over the line, another one. But I think that was pure hatred between the 2 dads there.
Listen, I'm excited for it. I mean, I remember watching their father's fight. It was before I was writing about boxing. I was, in college at the time that those fights were taking place. And to my recollection, the first fight was not televised in the United States. The second fight was televised on Showtime. So I definitely watched the second fight when it happened. The first fight, I think I, years later, went back and finally was able to watch it. But their sons have made their own names in different ways in boxing. And look, when you have that name, and their fathers had that rivalry, which is still fresh in the minds of a lot of people because it's not that long ago. Yes, it's in the 90s, but you're still within, somebody that may have watched it as a younger person then. Now they're maybe in their, 40s or 50s or 60s. They still remember it. They maybe spoke about it with their kids who are also boxing fans. So it still has relevance to the British sporting public. And now their sons really, in a way, couldn't avoid it. I kind of thought it would happen at some point. I'm a little surprised, to be frank, that it's happening this quickly, because Conor is still on the upswing. He still has a lot that he can learn and accomplish in his own weight class. And Eubank, even though he's not an old shot fighter, he's probably in his prime. But I didn't think that he would be willing to give that kind of that amount of weight up, and also that Conor would necessarily take it at this stage of his career, because it's really a seasoned pro against, I won't call Conor a novice, but the experience level is not even in the same ballpark. So I respect Eubank for the willingness to say, this is a big enough fight where I'll take the hit and I'll lose the weight. And I give Conor the credit for having the heart, if you will, to take on a challenge of that type of opponent at a bigger weight, knowing, by the way, that the loser, I won't say this, but there will be those, because they're jerks, basically, who will say they disgraced the family name or something stupid like that. But and that's unfortunate, because they're their father's sons, but this fight's not about their fathers. This fight's about these two men doing battle with each other.
Okay, Dan, Rafael, appreciate your time as always here, and we look forward to a packed media week for the rest of it. Press conference tomorrow, and by the time this goes out, press conference today, and weigh-in on Friday. Canelo Alvarez weigh-in is always a lively one, and then fight night Saturday live on DAZN. Canelo Golovkin III, and Dan, I'm sure we'll get a reaction after the main event. All right.
I look forward to it. It's going to be, I'm telling you right now, you can mark my words, it's going to be a good fight.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I put my dad in the street against a heavyweight.
I've gone back to the dad.
I've punched him a few more
There's 5
times.
blokes outside my front door. Can you come and help
One
me?
hell of a fucking story, so stay tuned.